get rid of him and put him in some cushy sort of, like hideaway position where he doesn't actually have to interact with his employees. That would be the play. Otherwise, this is going to get worse.
And he tweeted, him and his crew tweeted at me a couple times about like, what are you doing? And I'm like, just you. Right back off.
I tell you do the segue.
Yeah.
I now the fucking don't got to catch them all. Now you come up with one.
So big breaking news, and in some regards not news to any of us in the scene, in the sense of the behavior of Andy. So big breaking news, Wired, which again, big publication, breaks story that Riot Games is investigating top esports founder over bullying allegations. That team founder is Andy Dinh, Reginald. TSM is the team. And again, he's always been a very abrasive, outspoken guy, very loud. There's lots of video of him yelling when he was a player, as well as when he was a team owner at his players, right? So,
Yeah.
But this article really lays it out, right? Riot is investigating his behavior, right? So will they sanction him? Again, if you're totally unaware, TSM does play in Riot's League of Legends. They're one of the founding teams, if you will. And they've been, they are legal. That's where they started. TSM stands for Team Solo Mid, right? So they started as a League of Legends team. He's an ex-player. So we'll see. A lot of us were like, yay! Tell me something I don't know. Because, again, this is not news in the scene that he's abrasive and loud and obnoxious. And it's also like, okay, well, Riot's investigating, so that's like, okay, Riot's investigating, like, we've seen that, and it usually, we could not.
What does this particularly mean?
We couldn't find the phone anywhere. Couldn't find the phone anywhere. And TSM is doing their own investigation, so couldn't find the coffee cup anywhere. So we'll see. I love the idea that it's publicly getting out there and it's getting past us that he's kind of a fucking asshole, right? Because he's a fucking asshole, right?
I mean, this came up. This came up a while back, I think a few weeks ago. And there was it was mentioned. This was because obviously Double Lift,
yes,
right? Who was a player for this team for quite some time. He was like, it's pretty hard to get people to sort of testify publicly to being sort of treated poorly in the workplace, right? Because obviously there's a fear of retaliation. But fucking Double Lift don't give a fuck. Oh, what are you going to say to this guy? And I'll quote him here. He's like a bully who gets away with being a bad person because he's powerful, because people are afraid to stand up to him. This is something Double Lift said on a stream. So the guy's a bully. Basically, and because no one wants to sort of get in his way. So here's the problem. Okay, there's a little bit of opinion infused here with my coming words. So just be aware of that. But this guy was a League of Legends player, right? Way back. He was part of the first wave of LCS Pro.
Franchise
LCS
player,
Season 1.
Yep.
Guys like Double Lift. Yeah, guys like Reginald was a mid laner with a narrow champion pool and a big fucking mouth. This guy never grew up. But all of a sudden found himself in charge of, frankly, a gaming empire with a large amount of money and a lot of responsibility that he does not have the skill set to command, frankly. And I'm not surprised to sort of see this, because I watched a lot of his interviews back in the day. There was always some sort of drama with it. It was like him and Travis Gafford would be going at it, or someone would have managed to bait him into saying something stupid on camera or on stream, sort of way back in the days where in teams like Curse and stuff like that. And very, very early on. I attended the TSM holiday party this year.
Oh, okay.
On kind
Congrats on the
invitation
invite.
by one of my friends who brought me as their +1. Thank you. Yeah, it was nice. Look, honestly, they do well.
Probably
for
not going back, are
you?
you?
Very nice holiday party.
Guess it was one and done.
No,
maybe
it was fine. I didn't interact with Andy at all, but I did see him. And let me just say, based on a cursory glance at his behavior in real life, I'm not surprised to see these allegations come up, Scott. You were a bit more involved in the early LCS days, or at least you were a bit more aware of how things went back then, because a lot of the same people who were sort of making mogul moves in the early days of the LCS are still in the space now, right?
Yeah, and again, I'm not a League of Legends guy, so I couldn't talk to him as a player at all. But obviously, some of that that graduating class of the first League of Legends team, very successful, very powerful in our space now. TSM, Cloud9, Steve, who was Cursed, who now is co-owner of Team Liquid. Those guys were very powerful back in the day, and we collectively, lots of us heard lots of stories about them. Jack worked for Andy first, before Cloud9, he helped Andy with sponsorship. He came from Crunchyroll, I actually believe. Jack Etienne from Cloud9. So, they all figuring out how to do esports together, much like those of us that predecessor were figuring out in our world, like they were their clique, right? And there's also League of Legends, so they bonded over this new game. Again, lots of stories about them colluding with players, right? I heard this shit all the time. Because I was a player guy, but not a League of Legends. So did you hear they're doing this? And I'm like, what? League of Legends? I don't give a shit. I really discounted that game. Rachel will tell you the story that I laughed in her face at an IPL. I'm like, shut up. That game will do nothing. As I walked to StarCraft's like little fucking ballroom, right? One of the IPL events that she was doing League of Legends. I'm like, oh, whatever. Dota will crush it. It won't be very popular. Her and Trevor, both of them turned to me and like, you are an idiot. I'm like, shut up, FPS forever. Sure enough, most popular game on the planet, Rachel, you were right. Long story short, lots of collusion. So what do I mean by that, Scott? So these guys, this group of owners, much like the Warcraft 3 owners did back in the day, would collude and go, hey, you want this player, I want that player. Let's not get in a bidding war over this kid. You take him, I get the next one. And like I heard these stories from very reputable League of Legends industry type people, right? And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? This reminds me of that shit, right? And again, what that does is you artificially lower potentially what a player's worth is by stopping that bidding process, right? So maybe the kid got $2,000 a month, but that bidding war between those teams could have got to $5,000 a month. Maybe only got to $3,000. Who knows? But it's fucking collusion, and technically it's illegal, right? So
you're tampering with the play market.
Yeah, lots of these stories, and so so that's one thing. Now I have a little bit of direct Andy time, if you will.
Right, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, years ago, the PEA, which is the Professional Esports Association, group of team owners in North America got together and formed their own little association. They're going to do their own tournaments, they're going to run their own leagues, and they were starting with Counter-Strike. Those of you that are familiar with Counter-Strike, you're familiar with all this PEA drama. Got quite spicy. Long story, not so long. Basically, the team owners started their own Counter-Strike league. When they announced the league, they were going to play nice with all of the other leagues in play, which were the EPL for ESL, and Face It at that time was running the league as well, ECS, right? And PA was going to run alongside that, and the idea was the team owners felt that they needed to own one of these leagues, not just participate in them. That's, everyone's trying to figure out their rev streams, right? And so it does make sense. Cut out the middleman. You're the team owner, you're the TO, and the team owners that are in the league. Again, maybe this is a cool idea. The problem is they went from telling their players that they were going to play nice with all the leagues to basically sitting their players down and going, you're playing in our league and ECS, and you're no longer playing in EPL. EPL was, and still actually is, the biggest league we have in Counter-Strike. So it turned into a whole big drama. I got asked by some of the players to, hey, can you help us? Team owners are trying to maybe pull the rug out from under us. We don't want to not play in their league, but we don't want to be forced to not play in EPL. Cloud9 had just won the EPL the season before, so Sean Garris, Spencer Martin Hiko, and Jordan reached out to me, and I'm telling too much of the story. Long story short, we put together a big letter. It gets very public, saying players don't want to not play in this. Andy, at this time, Sean Garris is playing for TSM. You guys can all go do your homework on the whole rest of this story, because I'm going to try to move through this quicker. But basically, Sean gets rallied by Andy against the wall. Like, how dare you organize the players? He basically union busts Sean out of TSM, right? And bless Sean's little heart, all these emails, all the shit behind the scenes. Our lawyers at the time, that were Sean's lawyers at the time, were basically like, you should sue this guy. This is union busting. He can't do this. It's not illegal or immoral for you to talk to your fellow players about what you're all doing with the PEA, right? This is long before it became the actual player association, right? And just, he went on interviews. This is the one time that Thorin decided that Andy was his friend and went and got an interview with Andy because they notoriously hate each other. You mentioned Travis. All these people come after TSM, right? Thorin, Monty, you name it. They all are not fans of TSM or Andy. This is the one time that Thorin decides, I'll make some content. He interviews Andy. Andy says some shit even on air that literally the lawyers were like, what did he fucking say? And Sean had the opportunity. Sean was basically like, they were like, Sean, you could go after him. You could get your lost wages. You could make this even more public if you want, because we have very strong union busting rules in our country. Lots of companies still union bust every day of the week. You know, Amazon is going through all sorts of union shit. But basically the shit he said in public and in private, Sean had a case. Sean is probably the nicest person I know in esports. And he's just a sweetheart, and he doesn't like any sort of confrontation. He hated all of that drama, right? Didn't hate fighting the fight, but like what it blew up to just literally broke the guy, right? And so he's like, no, I ain't fucking, no, I don't want anything to do with this. I like it, but I kind of wish he would have, because it probably would have set some different precedent for how all this works. But anyway, so I tweeted on some of this, like, he's just fucking lucky that Sean didn't come after him, because he tweeted, him and his crew tweeted at me a couple times about shit, like, what are you doing? And I'm like, just fuck you, fuck right back off. Now, again, these are all millionaires now, so like, you know, more power to you, Andy, and all you characters, like, you're all well funded. But again, I think you hit the nail on the head. We've got people in this space that went from one job to another and were able to transition and figure out how to be a boss, how to be a manager. And we certainly have people that never fucking figured anything out. And I think he's one of them, right? And the problem with that is he's been
figured out how to get rich.
He's been rewarded for terrible behavior, right? Terrible, and it's not over, right? Like the stuff I'm talking about, the collusion, the PA, that's all years in the past. This shit, he's got employees on the record saying, like, just last week, people were fucking crying, right? So, like, again, he's got all his money now. He's set for life. Nothing you can really do other than, like, out them and explain to the world that these are not great humans. And I don't know what his investors do with this information. I don't know what Riot does. Maybe they all wait for the investigations. We have 2 investigations going on. TSM is internally investigating him, and Riot is. So we'll see, right? Yeah, I mean,
it's the same
we'll
thing
see.
I hear from him. So, like, the guy is... So what he says is the guy is really blunt, has really high expectations for people, and, like, doesn't sugarcoat anything that he says. I asked people at TSM that I knew personally, like, so tell me about Reggie. Like, what kind of boss is he? And they're like, well, he's... You know, and this is slightly paraphrased. Like, oh, well, he's effective at getting what he wants. And it very quickly became apparent to me that he was the kind of boss that a certain personality type could thrive under him. The kind of personality type that doesn't let it get to him when they're being insulted or told them that their work is trash or whatever, right? A very small subset of people who can tolerate a boss that is frankly rude and blunt to a fault. A lot of people, I can tell, were too afraid to stand up to the guy. He's like knee-high to a grasshopper. There's nothing imposing about him except his shitty fucking attitude. I know that, like, Doublelift had one more thing to say about Reggie on his stream. I don't know if we've got that here. We can run that here though. So let's see what Doublelift had to say in closing.
Oh yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I fucking hate TSM mostly because of Andy.
Again, franchise player, knows where all the skeletons are buried. Now, a little bit of devil's advocate. Obviously, he left. It didn't work out. They didn't re-sign him, you know. So has he got a little bit of, like, sour grapes adding to that? Maybe. But again, like, he knows the man better than anyone else around, right? So I'll take his...
Hey,
I'll take his finally he feels the freedom to be able to say maybe what's been on his mind for a long, long time. You know?
Well, no, he says, so obviously Cecilia D'Anastasio, excuse me if I butchered her name, she's the one that's written this article, right? And Wired, the publication, reached out to Reggie and asked him about this, and he said, and I'll quote this directly from the article from Cecilia, Dinh tells Wired that he has, quote unquote, extremely high expectations for myself, and I share those same expectations with everyone I work with. I have zero tolerance for underperformance. I'm intense, passionate, driven, and relentless in the pursuit of winning. It's my nature. I set an extremely high bar, and when I feel that someone is not delivering, I directly and bluntly share that feedback. He added, however, that when he looks back, my vocabulary was at times too harsh and ineffective. I mean, well, what's ineffective about just being a fucking dick about it? He goes on to say, I know I need to work on my delivery, and I'm working to improve the way I communicate with my team. Yada. So TSM is not the only example of a team, an org that is built into like a giant organization off the back of the charisma, or I mean, maybe not in TSM's case, but the personality of one of their star players. G2 is the same fucking thing, mate. G2 is a fucking loudmouth mid laner that eventually got eclipsed by his more hardworking peers, turning towards the business side of things and doing extremely well for themselves, as a result of that. Carlos is like the kind of guy who doesn't give a fuck. He's not going to poach plays. He doesn't quite care. You could call these guys both mavericks in their fucking fields. Yeah, obviously, Carlos is now moving on to becoming a singer-songwriter. So, shout outs to him. But, so there are examples of this that have happened. But the thing is that you kind of said that, Andy's being rewarded for this bad behavior. The reality is that he didn't really have to be a brilliant leader, manager of people, because he was one of the first that was, spinning up this kind of enterprise. And my understanding is that there are guys around him that are extremely good at business. He himself is considered by people that work with him to be very sharp when it comes to business. But the guy, has no tact. He has no understanding of people when it sort of sounds like it's his way or the highway. So he's going to have to learn, or he'll need to abdicate his little position at the top there and give it to someone who fucking knows how to work with people, real people, and then you can fuck off to the Caymans and tweet bullshit. You know what I mean? That might be the sort of correct move for this guy, because apparently he knows how to make money. So congrats. Obviously, this, you have to understand, TSM has a few different properties, right? Like the Blitz app is something that is run by the same company, and there's other things like that. So this is, and I've seen I've talked to people who work for TSM, brilliant people, incredibly skilled, talented at what they do. Really on the forefront of a lot of things that are happening in the gaming space, right? And he's very fortunate to have them as his employees, and he'd best learn how to fucking treat them properly, or get rid of him and put him in some cushy sort of, like hideaway position where he doesn't actually have to interact with his employees. That would be the play. Otherwise, this is going to get worse. He doesn't have respect for the people that fucking make him the money, man. Some bullshit.
Yeah, brand new facility. Yeah, again, it just seems weird to me that it's gone on so long. Like, again, I get his progression. He was a player, so you got to learn how to be a boss. And, those first 5 years or so, totally get that you could be unhinged for a while. But then you start getting the money, you start getting the investors and the other people helping you. And, like, Jason, every other day back, it would be like, Scott, you always... no one mentored him, obviously, right? Like, Jason and I are always doing that with each other 20 fucking years later, right? So, like... was everybody in that office the first 5 years just afraid to go, dude, that's a little harsh? Like, because maybe he just needed someone to, like, help him, because maybe it didn't need to be like this bad and go this long, right? Like, I don't know. Like, fuck.
Yeah. All right.
Anyway,
that's enough of that.
Yeah.
I'll give this motherfucker enough airtime. But yeah, we'll
keep an eye on it.
Again, Scott, Riot investigating doesn't mean anything. It's just people just tooting their own horn. So good on you, Riot. You don't really have any, like, power outside of trying to issue a fine to TSM, and they don't give a fuck. They know they're rich.